Okay, in this video we're going to be checking out a new flight controller board from BetaFPV. This is their new F4 flight controller for, obviously, for brush tiny whoops. And this has a built-in OSD, has a F4 flight controller, so it's got the newer version of the F4 chip here. So you can see right there, it's much smaller than the, I guess, the previous generation, so just make things lighter and also more power efficient. The FETs on here are also improved. They're much larger, and they do burst up to 30 amps. That seems like quite a lot, but that's what is documented. The receiver on here is also built in. It's a FreeSky receiver, and it is connected via the SPI bus. So there's no UART being occupied by the receiver, and the receiver comes in D8 mode only. Now, one of the things that I noticed here is the connections here for the camera is really tiny. So you got your power, video in, video out. You got your TX2 there for smart audio if you have a video transmitter with smart audio. But these pins are, the solder points are very small, so you're going to need some pretty good soldering skills to get to those points here to mount up your camera. Now, the board does come with a battery lead already pre-soldered on here. This is the 2mm connector type. And just like the other boards that BetaFPV sells, their USB port does come out the bottom here, which I think is in the best position. In addition to the board, you're given the mounting screws and rubber grommets for mounting into a frame, so if you need these, they are included. So I'm going to actually put this into something I haven't flown in a while. This is the BWOP B03 Pro, I believe, with their camera canopy. This is their toy grade board here, so can you obviously making a huge upgrade here, but using the 7mm motor, so it should have some pretty good power and comparable to some of the other BetaFPV products. So I'm just going to basically take out this board and plug in the motors into the obviously the included motor plugs, and then I'm going to solder up the video transmitter and camera to the OSD, and then I'll go and take this for a fly. Okay, so I got the board mounted and the camera hooked up along with the video transmitter. And one thing I didn't mention before was that the bind button right there, you need to press that after it's actually powered on. So in order to bind this, it's a little bit different. It's kind of similar to the way the Snapper 6 and 7 works. On that board, a similar receiver. You power it on first. There's going to be two lights over there next to the bind button. The one that's furthest away, that's going to be flashing green because there's no receiver signal. And then you're going to press and hold the bind button, I think, for a couple of seconds. The light will turn solid green, and then you know you're in bind mode. And then you go into your radio and go into bind mode. So I bound it to the other radio that they sent along with the board. This is the BetaFPV TX02, and if you've been following my channel, this looks very similar. In fact, it's I think exactly the same as the LDARC TX, the tiny TX8. That one came flashed with Futaba firmware and came with a Futaba receiver. This one comes already flashed with the FreeSky D8 receiver firmware, which you can obviously do here. It's an open source firmware via the USB port. So if you don't want to do the flashing or kind of worried about that, then don't get the one from LDARC. Get this one from BetaFPV. This already comes with the FreeSky firmware. All you gotta do to get into bind mode is you press and hold the trim button here, hold that down, power it on, and it'll go into bind mode, and then they'll bind it to the board. So pretty easy to do. At this point, I'll go ahead, it's already bound, and I'll go ahead and fly this, and we'll show you what this looks like in flight. Okay, so here I'm flying it with the controller, the white controller, the TX02 that they sent, and it does take a bit of getting used to. I think it has a lot to do with the spring tension of the gimbals, because they're kind of toy grade gimbals. I mean, they're not the worst, but actually for toy grade controllers, this is probably one of the better ones out there, but definitely is not as good as a hobby grade controller. So I am having some difficulties flying this in self-level mode, but this is probably the mode that I would recommend flying it in. Here I'm switching into Acro mode here, and because of the way the sticks feel. I'm all over the place in Acro mode here because I'm just not used to the way this thing the controller works. I don't think it's a really bad control. I think it will require getting used to and learning how the stick feels compared to the rates. It will probably require some adjustment either way. But yeah, it's difficult to fly if you're already used to a hobby grade transmitter. So I've just flipped back into self-level mode here. You're gonna have to play with your rates and probably spend some time learning how to fly with this transmitter. Okay, so here I'm flying it around on my daily driver radio, the Jumper T8SG V2 Plus. Obviously, hobby grade transmitter, and definitely much easier to fly with my daily radio, of course. The rates here, as you'll see, are kind of off. I bumped up the rates really high on the TX02 radio because it just seemed really sluggish. You see here, I just do 2 flips on the same rates, and I didn't actually realize it until right here, and I crash. I'm like, wait a minute, these rates are way off. So I go into the OSD and bump those rates back down to 0.8. And I am, of course, flying in Acro mode, and I'm just seeing how the performance of the board is now. Obviously, without the transmitter influence, obviously, and with flying with the transmitter I'm not used to, I'm not flying it so great, so I figured I better fly it with my daily transmitter to get a better idea of if there's any difference between this F4 board and, say, any typical F3 board. And you'll see here as I continue to fly through and get used to this particular setup, I get pretty comfortable in flying this. I think that the performance difference between the F4 and F3 I think it's definitely there. It's kind of hard to quantify. It just feels a lot smoother. I'm just flying here with default Betaflight PIDs. I think whatever the firmware this came with, 3.4, I didn't modify the PIDs in any way, and it seems to fly pretty smooth. There's a little bit of, I guess, hard to explain, but a little bit of bounce back, but it's hard to see in the video. It's just something I felt. But overall, it felt pretty smooth. I would say that this felt smoother than an F3 that was tuned versus this F4 that was not tuned, so I'm pretty sure I could probably spend more time tuning this and getting perfection out of it, but I just don't have the time to do that. I think that if you're a tuning freak, probably want to go with this F4. You'll probably have an easier time tuning this F4 versus an F3, but of course this is just speculation on my part. I have no scientific data to prove this whatsoever. You guys can be the judge of that yourself based on this video. Anyway, I'm just going to leave you the rest of the flying of this battery here, just doing some flips and rolls and getting a little bit more daring in my flying here. But yeah, I think I like this board. Yeah, it's a good board, so definitely check it out. Put links in the description if you guys are interested.